The sands whisper of a journey across time.
I'm Joshua, and this is the Year of the Camel on an FM podcasts.
The sound of Arabia.
The Arabian camel goes global. About 90% of the world's camels are dromedary camels, also known as the Arabian camel. All existing dromedary camels are now domesticated. This noble creature, through its service and loyalty to the Arabs, would also start to become a sought-after prize outside of Arabia. In this episode, we discuss some of the history of the Arabian camel outside of Arabia. From 19th century Australia to the state of Arizona in the United States, the ship of the desert became itself not only a vessel of trade, but also a subject of trade itself. Our story starts in Rajasthan, India. Although India's total camel population, all of them descendants of the dromedary or Arabian camels, decreased by 37% between 2012 and 2019, according to the latest count, the 20th livestock census published in 2019. Current estimates suggest that there are fewer than 200,000 camels left among the 9 breeds, and 80% of these animals live in Rajasthan, where they're bred to provide transport, wool, milk, as well as plow fields. In efforts to protect camel stocks and heritage in 2014, the camel was declared the state animal of Rajasthan. Camel milk has become a trendy drink in India, touted by many nutritionists as the next superfood. It has low amounts of sugar, it's rich in vitamins and minerals such as vitamin C and potassium, and is an alternative for the lactose intolerant. Researchers are investigating the potential therapeutic benefits of camel milk to human health, though such studies have been too limited to make any conclusions. One study on a small group of type 1 diabetics in Bikaner, Rajasthan, for instance, showed that camel milk could reduce a person's need for insulin. There are many theories as to how the dromedary camels made their way to India. Most scholars agree that dromedaries made their way to the subcontinent through trade with Arabia for thousands of years. The dromedaries, also known as Arabian camels, have become a celebrated component of culture in Rajasthan. In fact, every year the beauty and the majesty of the Arabian camel are commemorated in the esteemed region of India. This yearly event is dedicated to the tough creatures surviving the harsh desert conditions. The festival was organized as an initiative by the Department of Tourism, Art and Culture of Rajasthan. Camels and the Bikaner have a long association. Since the era of the founder of the city, Rao Bikaji, Bikaner has been the only camel breeding region. The Camel Festival in Bikaner is a 2-day affair. The festivals start with a colorful parade of beauty-adorned camels against the backdrop of the majestic Jungara Fort. People from all over the world come to enjoy the spectacular displays of camels dressed in vibrant bridles, traditional necklaces, and heavy anklets, showing off wonderful footwork to the lovely tunes on desert sands. Also, people come to witness an array of camel race events, camel games, and other cultural performances. Hundreds and thousands of tourists and locals revel in the traditional festival, feel absolutely pleasured and delightful to see the beauty of the Arabian camel in Rajasthan. Traditional Rajasthani folk performances and music add largely to the charm of this festival. The fascinating fire dance adds glamour to the festival. The ambience of the fair inspires fire dancers to perform brilliant acts. Their skills and the shows are nothing short of spectacular. The melodies of folk music are the soothing sensation the world is charmed and mesmerized by when they see these beautiful Arabian camels being celebrated in such a traditional Rajasthani way. From India, we go to Australia, where the evolutionary advantages of the Arabian camels have completely benefited them to become the top herbivore on the continent. Camels had been used successfully in desert exploration in other parts of the world. By the mid-1800s, exploration in Australia was at its peak. peak, with expeditions setting out almost monthly. The race to map the continent, locate natural resources, or find new places to settle moved away from the coast and further into the more inhospitable heart of Australia. It was soon obvious that the traditional horses and wagons used for such expeditions were not suitable in the strange and foreign land. The solution to the problem of finding suitable transport for inland exploration and travel was to bring in camels. As nobody at the time knew how to handle camels, cameleers were recruited to Australia as well. The introduction of camels and cameleers proved to be a turning point in the exploration and development of the Australian interior. For a short period of time, in the 1860s to the earlier 1900s, these cameleers and their ships of the deserts became the backbone of the Australian economy. They accompanied exploration parties carrying supplies and materials where horses and oxen could not. They carted supplies, mail, and even water to remote settlements. They transported the supplies, tools, and equipment needed for the surveying and the construction of some of Australia's earliest and greatest infrastructure projects, such as the Overland Telegraph and the Trans-Australian Railway. In 1860, 24 camels and 3 cameleers arrived in Melbourne to join the Burke and Wills expedition. The camels again proved their ability to survive the harsh and dry conditions of the Australian outback. By the 1860s, most Australian states were importing camels and cameleers. In 1866, South Australian Samuel Stuckey brought in more than 100 camels and 31 cameleers. Over the next decade, more and more camels and cameleers were brought to Australia as breeding programs and trading routes were established. It is estimated that from 1870 to 1900 alone, more than 2,000 cameleers and 15,000 camels came to Australia. The cameleers were collectively known as Afghan cameleers. While some were originally from Afghanistan, others came from other countries such as Baluchistan, Kashmir, Sindh, Rajasthan, Egypt, Persia, Turkey, and the Punjab. So spoke a variety of languages. Their common bond was their Islamic religion and the fact that they were almost exclusively young, middle-aged men. By the 1930s, Australia's inland transport was controlled by rail and increasingly road networks. Facing the prospect of no employment and sometimes hostile government and people, many of the cameleers returned to their homelands, some after decades of living in Australia. Others remained and turned to other trades and means of making a living. Rather than seeing their camels killed, they released them into the wild, where they have since flourished. In 2007, the estimated feral camel population of Australia was around 1 million, approximately half of which were in Western Australia. Today, feral camels are found in over 37% of mainland Australia. According to the Australian government, today there are just over 300,000 camels ever since the government has implemented population control measures. Although in the past, camels had caused lots of damage to native wildlife in Australia because they are able to consume 80% of the natural vegetation found there, today the camel industry is huge, even in a faraway land such as Australia. Industries have begun to realize the economic advantage provided by Arabian camels, and now Australia is home to some of the largest camel, dairy, meat, and leather operations in the world. We finally make our way to the Western Hemisphere, to the United States of America, where the United States Camel Corps was a mid-19th century experiment by the United States Army in using camels as pack animals in the southwestern United States. In 1836, Major George Crossman, United States Army, who was convinced from his experiences in the American Indian Wars in Florida that camels would be useful as beasts of burden, encouraged the War Department to use camels for transportation. In 1848, or earlier, Major Henry C. Wayne conducted a more detailed study and recommended importation of camels to the War Department. Wayne's opinion agreed with those of then Senator Jefferson Davis of Mississippi. Major Wayne was assigned to procure the camels. On June 4th, 1855, Wayne departed New York City on board the USS Supply under the command of the Lieutenant David Dixon Porter. After arriving in the Mediterranean Sea, Wayne and Porter began procuring camels. Stops included Tunisia, Malta, Greece, Turkey, and Egypt. They acquired 33 camels, 19 females and 14 males, including 2 Bactrian or 2-humped camels, 29 dromedaries and 1 dromedary calf, and 1 Bugdi, which is a cross between a male Bactrian camel and a female dromedary camel. Wayne and Porter hired 5 camel drivers, some Arab and some Turkish, and on February 15th, 1856, USS Supply set sail for Texas. Porter fell in love with the camels and established strict rules for their care, watering, feeding of the animals in his charge. No experiments were conducted regarding how long a camel could survive without water. The U.S. military soon set them to work. Often drawing crowds of wide-eyed spectators, the camels successfully hauled 1,200 pounds of hay, delighting those who gathered to observe the feat. Between 1857 and 1859, Lieutenant Edward Fitzgerald Bale employed dozens of camels in several high-profile expeditions across the American Southwest. The list of American camel enthusiasts was growing. The animals, as observers noted, offered several advantages in desert travel. They could survive without water for long stretches of time, manage heavy loads, travel more than 30 miles a day, and do so while consuming less food than horses and mules. Although camels proved to be hardy and well-suited to travel through the region, the army declined to adopt them for military use. Although camels made cameo appearances in the Union and Confederate armies during the war, they weren't widely employed. They made better mascots than military mounts in the United States. By the end of the war, most had been auctioned off or simply set loose. Some found their ways to zoos and circuses. 5 went to the Ringling Brothers, while others disappeared into the wild. For decades to come, startled travelers reported sightings of strange beasts moving across the desert landscape of the Southwest. Such sightings contributed to a subculture of American camel lore, including the story of the Red Ghost, who reportedly rampaged across the West with a headless rider on his back. Hollywood took some of these stories to the silver screen with Southwest Passage, a 1954 film, and Holmes, a 1976 film. Inland, a best-selling novel about historic interlude, ended up on Barack Obama's summer reading list. A memorial to camel handler Haji Ali, or Hai Jolly, as his name was mispronounced, still stands in Arizona. The historic mining town of Virginia City, Nevada, holds camel races every year. The Arabian camel may be from Arabia, but this camel has left a mark all over the world. Although viewed as quintessentially an Arab icon, the camel has had an enormous impact on the history of many nations around the world. This leaves us with no doubt why the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia would dedicate an entire year to these beautiful creatures. 2024, of course, the year of the camel.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the Year of the Camel. Until next time, this is Joshua Van Alstyne, signing off on the Al FM podcast's The Sound of Arabia.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating insights on the Year of the Camel with Al FM podcasts.
The Sound of Arabia.